Rain fell in sheets across the city of Silver Lake, washing the streets in a glistening sheen of darkness. The night smelled of wet concrete and gasoline, a typical evening in the restless heart of California's new metropolis. But beneath the roar of engines and the hiss of rainfall, something else lingered. A quiet tension. A whisper of dread. The kind that made people glance over their shoulders for no reason at all. Jenna Moore closed her umbrella and stepped under the awning of her apartment complex. She was 23, a film student, and tonight she was alone. Her roommate had gone to visit family for the weekend, leaving Jenna in a silence she didn't mind, until now. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number, do you like scary movies? Jenna frowned, her thumb hesitating over the screen. A prank, probably. Everyone in Silver Lake was obsessed with the recent move of Stab Production to the city. She'd even walked past the studio lot a few times, where fans gathered just to glimpse the props. She typed back, wrong number. The reply came instantly. Unknown number, oh, I don't think so, Jenna. Her stomach tightened. Okay, not funny, she muttered, locking her phone. She told herself it was some classmate pulling a stunt. Still, when she reached her apartment door, she double-checked that it was locked before turning on the lights. The glow illuminated her small living room, cozy, filled with old horror posters and film reels. The wind howled outside, rattling the glass. She poured herself a drink, trying to shake off the unease. Then her phone rang. A distorted voice came through, low and playful, almost amused. You hang up on me, and you'll regret it. Jenna froze, her pulse spiking. Who is this? You really don't recognize me, the voice teased. Come on, Jenna. You said you love horror films. Let's make one. This isn't funny, she snapped. Oh, but it is. I've waited so long to bring the mask back. New city, new blood. The line went dead. For a moment, the only sound was the rain hammering the windows. Jenna's hand trembled as she set her phone down. She wanted to believe it was a prank, but the voice, it had a cruel familiarity. Like a ghost from a story she thought was long finished. A knock came at the door. She jumped. Her heart hammered in her chest. She crept closer, listening. Another knock, harder this time. Who's there? She called, voice shaking. No answer. She leaned toward the peephole, squinting. A tall figure stood outside, drenched in rain. A black hood. A gloved hand. And beneath the hood, the face. That white, elongated mask with the hollow eyes and gaping mouth, screaming without sound. Ghostface. Jenna stumbled back with a gasp, nearly dropping her phone. She dialed 911, but before she could press call, the lights flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the apartment whole. A crash came from the kitchen, shattering glass. She covered her mouth to stop a scream, creeping backward toward the hallway. Her breath was ragged, her body trembling. She could hear the slow creak of footsteps. Come on, Jenna, the voice called out, somewhere in the dark. Don't you want to play? She bolted. Down the hall, toward her bedroom. She slammed the door and locked it. Her mind raced. Her window, it was the only way out. She yanked at it, forcing it open against the rain and wind. Then, silence. She froze, listening. No footsteps now. Just rain. Just breathing. Her phone vibrated again. A message. Unknown number, too slow. Before she could react, the closet door behind her creaked open. The masked figure lunged. Jenna screamed as the knife caught the light, flashing once, twice, again, each strike a violent punctuation to the shriek of rain and thunder. Her phone slipped from her hand, the screen lighting up one last time with the words. Scream for me. When the police arrived hours later, the neighbors stood outside in shock. The apartment's walls were streaked with blood, her body found sprawled beneath her favorite stab poster. On the window, drawn in crimson, a single message glistened under the flashing lights. The show begins again. Across town, the news spread like wildfire. Another Ghostface killing, after years of silence. And in a quiet suburban home on the edge of Silver Lake, Sidney Prescott's phone began to ring. She stared at it for a long moment, dread coiling in her chest. She had sworn this was all over. That she'd finally escaped. But as the phone kept ringing, she knew one thing for certain. The mask was back. And this time, it wasn't finished. The news anchor's voice cracked over the television. Police confirmed the brutal murder of 23-year-old Jenna Moore in her Silver Lake apartment late last night. Authorities have not released details, but sources suggest the killer wore a Ghostface mask, echoing the infamous Woodsboro and New York killings from years past. Sidney Prescott stood frozen in her kitchen, coffee untouched, the sound of rain tapping against the window. It had been years since she'd heard that name, Ghostface. Years of silence, healing, and pretending the world had moved on. But the moment she saw the mask on the TV screen, she felt it again. That old, hollow ache of fear. Her phone buzzed. Gail Weathers. Sidney hesitated before answering. Gail. I assume you've seen the news, Gail said, her tone clipped but shaky. I did. I'm on my way to Silver Lake now. They found her near the old studio lot. The same lot where they're shooting Stab Reborn. Sidney sighed, pressing her fingers to her temple. It's starting again, isn't it? Gail paused. You know it is. Sidney's eyes drifted to a framed photo on her counter, her husband, Mark, and their 2 daughters, smiling in front of their new house in the suburbs. She'd sworn she'd never go back. Never step into another blood-soaked nightmare. But some ghosts never die. By nightfall, Silver Lake was already buzzing. Reporters swarmed the crime scene, and police struggled to keep them away. Inside the yellow tape, Detective Aaron Holt surveyed the chaos. He'd been a rookie during the last Ghostface killings in New York, a survivor himself. He never thought he'd see that mask again. Same MO, his partner muttered. Call before the kill. Knife to the torso. Signature message in blood. Holt stared at the apartment window where the message still glistened. The show begins again. Jesus, he whispered. He's taunting us. Or her, his partner said. Could be anyone. Holt turned away. Doesn't matter who. What matters is, it's back. Later that night, in a small downtown diner, Gail sat across from Kirby Reed. The last time they'd seen each other, Kirby had barely survived the carnage of Woodsboro. Now, older and sharper, she wore the look of someone who'd spent years trying to outgrow her nightmares. So, Kirby said, sipping her coffee. The mask's back. And they're calling it a copycat. Gail smirked bitterly. They always do. Until the body count starts to rise. Why here? Why now? Gail leaned forward. Because Silver Lake's where Stab Reborn is filming. The 7th film. A whole cast of influencers, new actors, and desperate producers trying to milk the tragedy for one more headline. Maybe Ghostface wanted the spotlight back. Kirby frowned. Or maybe someone close to the film wanted revenge. The diner door opened with a soft jingle. Sidney stepped inside. The years showed in her eyes, but her presence was still sharp, commanding. Sidney, Gail said, standing up. Gail. Kirby. For a moment, the 3 women just looked at each other, survivors of a legacy they never asked for. Sidney broke the silence. If Ghostface wants me back in this story, fine. But I'm ending it this time. Kirby tilted her head. You really think this is about you? Sidney's expression hardened. It always is. Meanwhile, across the city, the Stab Reborn set was eerily quiet. The cast had been dismissed early after news of Jenna's murder broke. Only one remained, Riley Jones, the film's lead, scrolling through his phone in the dark. A message appeared on his screen. Unknown number, you play a killer on screen. Let's see how well you act when it's real. Riley laughed uneasily, typing back, nice one. Fans are already getting wild. Then his phone rang. The same distorted voice, playful and cold. You know, Riley, you should have stuck to comedy. He froze. Who is this? Just a fan. A real one. He looked around. The soundstage was empty, rows of fake doors, rubber knives, and movie blood. But somewhere in the shadows, something moved. I've seen every stab, the voice went on. Every scene, every scream. But tonight's not a movie. The call ended. Riley's flashlight flickered as he turned toward the dressing room hallway. A door creaked open. He stepped closer. Hello. The answer came in a blur of motion. Ghostface burst from the shadows, blade gleaming. Riley stumbled back, the scream catching in his throat as the knife plunged deep into his chest. He collapsed beside a fake blood rig, his real blood pooling beneath it, mingling with the movie gore. As he gasped his last breath, Ghostface leaned close and whispered, now that's method acting. At dawn, news of the second murder hit the airwaves. 2 deaths in 24 hours. And this time, the killer had left something new at the scene. A torn photograph of Sydney, Gale, and Kirby, marked with an X across each of their faces. The past wasn't just returning. It was hunting them. The streets of Silver Lake were washed in blue and red, flashing police lights reflecting off puddles and store windows. Another body. Another night. The city wasn't sleeping anymore, it was holding its breath. Sydney Prescott arrived at the scene, her face partially hidden beneath a black hood. She hadn't set foot behind police tape in years. Yet here she was again, staring at another young victim, another Ghostface kill. Detective Holt approached, his expression grim. Sydney Prescott. I thought you retired from this nightmare. I did, she said softly. But it doesn't seem to care. Holt handed her a photo, an evidence shot from the second murder. Riley Jones, sprawled across a fake horror set, drenched in blood. Beside his body, a photograph torn from an old Woodsboro newspaper. A picture of Sydney, Gale, and Kirby, each face marked with a thick red slash. They're targeting survivors, Holt said. You, Gale, Kirby. This isn't random. Sydney stared at the picture. No, it's personal. It always is. Across town, Gale Weathers stood in her hotel room, staring at her reflection. Her career had been built on the blood of the innocent, and she told herself she was done chasing trauma for headlines. But something in her refused to walk away. She still had that fire. That obsession. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. For a moment, her chest tightened. She hesitated, then answered. Gale Weathers, the distorted voice greeted, smooth as ice. Her stomach dropped. If this is a prank. Still chasing the story, Gale. Still writing about other people's deaths to feel alive. Who is this? The voice chuckled. You should know me. You've been telling my story for decades. She gritted her teeth. Ghostface. That's right. And I'm such a big fan of your work. In fact, I think it's time for a new chapter. One written in your blood. The line went dead. Gale's heart pounded, her fingers trembling as she hung up. She knew that voice wasn't just mocking her, it was studying her. Whoever was behind the mask knew exactly how to hurt her. And somewhere outside, beneath the streetlight, that same white mask tilted upward toward her window. Watching. Meanwhile, Kirby sat inside the Silver Lake Police Department's cold interrogation room, flipping through case files. She had joined the FBI years ago, her way of taking control of the fear that once defined her. Now, that past was clawing back. Every pattern was familiar, the taunting calls, the public kills, the personal connections. But this Ghostface was different, more methodical, more cinematic. Every crime scene looked like a set piece, every victim chosen for a role. "This one's making a movie," she whispered to herself. Detective Holt entered. "You think it's connected to Stab Reborn?" Kirby nodded. "All of the victims so far are tied to the film, actors, crew, or fans. But the photos of us? That's the message. The film is the stage, but we're the story." Holt frowned. "So, what's the motive?" She closed the folder. Legacy. Later that night, Sydney returned to her hotel. The rain had turned the streets into a mirror of light. She sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted, haunted by the ghosts of every scream she'd ever heard. Her phone buzzed. A text. "Unknown number, miss me." She froze, staring. Her hands trembled as another message appeared. "You thought you killed me. You thought it ended. But masks hide more than faces, Sydney. They hide bloodlines." Her heart raced. "Bloodlines." She typed back quickly, "Who are you?" The reply came instantly. "The son of the story you started." Her phone rang before she could process the words. The same distorted voice. "Did you really think your past wouldn't come back to you, Sydney?" "Who are you?" she whispered. "Oh, you'll find out soon enough. But first, I'm going to carve my way through everyone who ever survived you. Gale. Kirby. The rest. Then I'll come for you. And this time, you won't make it to the credits." Sydney's breath hitched. "You think you can scare me?" The voice chuckled darkly. "No. I think I can finish you." The call ended, leaving her in dead silence. At that same moment, Gale returned to her car after meeting with a contact from the studio. The rain had stopped, but the air felt heavy, like the world was waiting. She slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and froze. In the rearview mirror. A white mask. "Hello, Gale." Ghostface lunged from the back seat, knife flashing. Gale screamed, kicking the door open, rolling onto the wet pavement as the blade slashed through her shoulder. She scrambled for her gun, firing twice, one shot shattering the windshield, the other tearing through the night. But when she looked up, Ghostface was gone. Only the echo of laughter remained. She pressed her hand against her wound, trembling. "You want me? Come and get me." Minutes later, Holt's phone buzzed. Another crime alert. Another death. But this time, the victim wasn't random. The name on the report made his blood run cold. Mark Kincaid. Sydney's husband. The killer had drawn a red smile on his face, and pinned a note to his chest. "The family that screams together, dies together." Sydney Prescott hadn't cried in years, until now. The world around her felt unreal, as though she were trapped inside someone else's nightmare. The police lights outside her home painted everything red and blue, flashing across the lifeless body of her husband, Mark Kincaid. He had been stabbed multiple times, precision strikes, deliberate and cruel. The same Ghostface calling card. But it was the message left behind that haunted her more than the body. "The family that screams together, dies together." Sydney stared at those words until they burned into her mind. She'd spent her life surviving, escaping, rebuilding. But this time, the killer had crossed the one line she could never forgive. The final tear slipped down her cheek as she whispered, "You want me back? You've got me." Gale Weathers arrived at the scene, her arm wrapped in a bloodied bandage. She pushed past the officers, ignoring their protests. When she saw Sydney standing beside the covered body, she stopped cold. "Sid." Sydney didn't look at her. He's gone. God, I'm so sorry, Gail said, her voice trembling. I tried calling. Sydney turned to face her, eyes hollow and cold. He came for me, Gail. He killed Mark to drag me back into this. And I'm done running. Gail's jaw tightened. Then we fight. They met Kirby later that night in the Silver Lake precinct. The small office buzzed with tension. Walls lined with evidence photos, bloody masks, phone logs, set blueprints. Every clue pointed to chaos, but none to a face. Kirby leaned against the desk, flipping through notes. This Ghostface isn't a random copycat. He's organized. Smart. He's planned this for months, maybe years. Look at the victims, actors, crew, producers, all tied to Stab Reborn. He's reconstructing the Woodsboro legacy. Gail frowned. Then what's his connection to Sydney? Sydney looked up, voice steady but haunted. He said he was the son of the story I started. Kirby froze. The son? Sydney nodded. And if that's true, there's something he wants to prove. Revenge, Gail muttered. It always comes back to revenge. Kirby looked over the files. If he's connected to Stab Reborn, maybe he's part of the production. A fan or insider obsessed with the real story. Someone who thinks you, the survivors, ruined the original ending. Sydney exhaled, the weight of years pressing on her chest. Then let's finish it. At the Stab Reborn set, the night crew worked quietly, trying to pretend the world wasn't collapsing around them. The director, Michael Bowers, barked orders through his headset. We shoot the finale tonight. I don't care what the press says, this movie gets finished. His assistant hesitated. Sir, half the cast is dead. Then the other half better start acting. He turned to grab his coffee, and froze. On the cup, written in red marker, cut. Before he could react, the lights went out. A voice echoed through the speakers, distorted and cold. Quiet on. Set. Michael spun around, panic rising. Who's there? Ghostface stepped out from behind the curtains, the mask gleaming under the faint glow of the emergency light. This scene, the killer said softly, is your last take. Michael barely had time to scream before the knife plunged through his chest, the sound of flesh and fabric ripping drowned only by his gurgled breath. Blood sprayed across the fake walls as Ghostface tilted his head, watching the director's body slump lifelessly to the floor. Cut and print, he whispered, then disappeared into the dark. By morning, the news had spread again. Another killing, another piece of the puzzle. Sydney, Gail, and Kirby watched the footage from the scene, a trail of blood leading to a message scrawled on the camera lens itself. Every story needs an ending. Kirby looked at the others. He's not done. He's building towards something big, something public. Gail's expression hardened. Then we make it public first. We hunt him, we expose him, and we end this damn legacy before it ends us. Sydney nodded. No more waiting. We go to the studio tonight. That night, the trio entered the abandoned Stab Reborn lot. The power had been cut, the set drenched in eerie silence. Props and fake blood littered the floors, but the real stains hadn't been cleaned. Sydney led the way with a flashlight. Stay close. The sound of static filled the air, old monitors flickering to life on their own. Footage played on loop, clips from Stab 1, 2, 3, and now, security footage of them, Sydney, Gail, and Kirby walking into the set right now. Kirby's voice shook. He's watching us. A speaker crackled overhead. The Ghostface voice filled the building. Welcome to the grand finale, ladies. You've all played your parts beautifully. But remember, only one final girl survives. The lights burst on. Every wall of the studio was covered in photos, victims from Woodsboro, New York, Silver Lake. A family tree of death, with strings connecting them all. And in the center, Sydney's face. Under it, written in dripping red paint. Mother of the Mask. Sydney's breath caught. What the hell? Gale stepped closer, eyes narrowing. Oh my God. Sid, look. Pinned beside the photos was a birth certificate, old, yellowed, but unmistakable. Father, Billy Loomis. Mother, unknown. Kirby whispered, he wasn't lying. Sydney's voice trembled. He's Billy's son. A faint echo of laughter filled the air, low, twisted, gleeful. Ghostface's voice purred through the speakers one last time. And now, Mom, it's time to die like a star. The air inside the Stab Reborn studio felt heavy, like the entire building was holding its breath. The faint hum of the old projectors echoed through the darkness, illuminating the photos and blood-scrawled words that surrounded Sydney, Gale, and Kirby. Father, Billy Loomis. Mother, unknown. The name alone hit Sydney like a knife to the chest. Billy Loomis, her first Ghostface. Her first trauma. Her first love that turned to a nightmare. She'd watched him die decades ago, yet his shadow still haunted every scream that followed. Now, it had given birth to another monster. Sydney's voice came out hoarse. Billy had a son. Kirby nodded grimly. If that document's real, yeah. And whoever he is, he's out for blood. Gale glanced around the walls of the studio. Photos, newspaper clippings, even stills from the Stab movies, all arranged like a shrine. In the center, a single photo of Billy Loomis, eyes circled in red. Beneath it, the words. He was a killer. I am perfection. Kirby stepped closer to one of the monitors. Static buzzed across the screen, then faded into live security footage, grainy shots of hallways, dressing rooms, staircases. Then another feed appeared. A live shot of a woman tied to a chair in the prop room. Her mouth taped shut, her face bruised. Gale gasped. That's Detective Holt's partner. Oh my God, he's got her. Sydney's jaw tightened. Then we end this. Right now. They moved fast through the dim corridors. Every flicker of light made their nerves twitch. Every sound felt too close. Gale held her gun tight, Kirby carried a flashlight, and Sydney, she carried fury. Her heart pounded with every step, every memory flashing behind her eyes. Billy's smirk. His words, we all go a little mad sometimes. Sid, Gale whispered, if he really is Billy's son. Then I should have killed his father slower, Sydney hissed. The prop room door was slightly ajar. A single bulb swung above it, creaking. Blood pooled beneath the frame. Kirby pushed the door open. The woman inside was already dead. Her throat slit, her body arranged like a mannequin in one of the Stab scenes. A phone sat on her lap, screen glowing. Gale picked it up. It buzzed instantly. Unknown number, smile for the camera. Before they could react, a projector on the far wall flickered to life. Ghostface appeared on screen, standing in the same room, behind them. They spun around. Empty. Then the laughter came from above. Ghostface dropped from the rafters, knife glinting under the bulb. Kirby fired her weapon, but he vanished into the shadows with inhuman speed. The bulb shattered, plunging them into darkness. Sydney shouted, spread out. Watch the exits. Footsteps echoed, then a scream. Kirby's flashlight hit the ground, rolling. Gale turned, firing into the dark. Silence. Kirby. No answer. Sydney knelt, her breathing sharp. The flashlight rolled back toward her, dripping red. Oh God, she whispered. They fled down the corridor, every step echoing like a heartbeat. Sydney led the way, rage and terror colliding inside her. Then, her phone buzzed. Unknown number, You left her to die, just like you left my father. Sydney stopped dead. Show yourself, she screamed into the darkness. You want me? You've got me. The reply came through the speakers above, that cold, mocking voice distorted but eerily calm. Oh, Mom, you really don't understand. This isn't about revenge. This is about legacy. About finishing the story you started when you killed Billy. You killed my bloodline. You destroyed my name. So now, I'm rewriting it, with yours. Sydney's eyes darted around the room. You're not Billy's son. You're just another coward in a mask. The voice chuckled. Wrong. I'm your legacy too. You and my father made me. Gail's voice cracked. Sydney, what the hell does that mean? The projector flickered again. Footage began to play, grainy, old VHS footage. Sydney at 17. A party. A kiss with Billy Loomis. A shot of a young woman, unknown, watching them through a window. Ghostface's voice whispered, my mother watched you take everything from her. Her love. Her sanity. Her life. And when she died, I inherited her truth. The screen went black. Then, in blood-red text. Hello, Mom. A spotlight burst to life in the center of the studio. Ghostface stood there, tall, lean, the mask glistening with fresh blood. He held Kirby's gun in one hand, the knife in the other. Sydney raised hers instantly, aiming for his chest. Take off the mask, she demanded. He tilted his head, slowly reaching up. The mask fell away. Beneath it, a young man, maybe 26, with dark eyes that looked achingly familiar. The same intensity as Billy Loomis. The same cruel smirk. My name's Evan, he said. Evan Loomis. Sydney's voice broke. You can't be. I am, he cut her off. And I'm everything my father wanted to be. Smarter. Faster. Meaner. You survived him, Sydney. But you won't survive me. Gail stepped forward, shaking. You're insane. He smiled faintly. I was born insane. It's in my blood. He lunged. The knife flashed, Sydney fired. He dodged, slicing her arm. Gail fired next, hitting him in the shoulder. He stumbled but laughed, blood dripping from his wound. You can't kill me, he said, voice trembling with fury. You made me. Sydney pressed her hand to her bleeding arm, glaring through the pain. Then I'll unmake you. Before she could fire again, the lights exploded, plunging the set into total darkness. A whisper echoed from the shadows, close, too close. See you soon, Mom. And just like that, he was gone. As dawn broke, the police arrived to find nothing but blood, shattered glass, and the bodies of the dead. But Sydney knew this wasn't over. Billy's son was alive. And the story wasn't finished. Silver Lake was no longer a city, it was a massacre. The streets were bathed in sirens and screams, the reflection of red and blue lights cutting through the smoke that rose from burning cars and shattered storefronts. Panic swept through every alley, every home, as reports spread across the airwaves. Ghostface had returned, and this time, there were many. Evan Loomis had done what no Ghostface before him had managed, he had created an army. Sydney Prescott stood in the middle of the police command tent, her arm bandaged, her expression hard and hollow. She hadn't slept since that night at the studio. Gail sat beside her, pale but unbroken, flipping through photographs of the new crime scenes. Each image was worse than the last. Victims across the city, students, cops, actors, even reporters, all killed with the same brutality. Each body left behind with a mask over its face, as if Ghostface were replicating himself over and over. It's chaos, Gail muttered, voice shaking. They're saying it's a cult. The Ghostface Rebirth Movement. Teenagers, Fans, online groups, they think it's some kind of rebellion. Sydney clenched her fists. He's not making followers. He's making monsters. Detective Holt slammed a file shut. We've confirmed 6 separate killings tonight. All different perpetrators. All wearing masks. He's recruiting them, training them, sending them out to kill for him. The bastard's turning the city into his stage. Sydney's voice dropped low. Then we burn the stage down. Meanwhile, across Silver Lake, the nightmare played out in real time. Inside a downtown movie theater, a midnight screening of Stab Reborn had turned into slaughter. The crowd was laughing, cheering, until the lights went out, and the laughter turned into screams. When the lights came back on, a dozen people were dead, the white masks of their killers glinting in the flicker of the projector. The movie kept playing on the screen, the fictional Ghostface mirroring the real horror happening beneath it. The killers spoke in unison, their voices distorted through cheap voice changers. Everyone's a star in our story. Back at the precinct, Sydney loaded her gun with steady hands. Kirby had survived, barely. She sat nearby, bandaged and bruised, her eyes hollow but burning with determination. "We can't fight an army," Kirby said. "This isn't like before. It's not one Ghostface. It's a movement." Sydney looked up, her tone icy. "Then we kill the head of the movement." Kirby frowned. "Evan Loomis. He wants me," Sydney said. "He's always wanted me. And if I go after him, he'll come out of hiding." Gail shook her head. "Sid, that's suicide." Sydney's stare didn't waver. "It's justice." That night, they tracked him to an old film warehouse near the edge of the city, the same place Stab 1 had originally been shot decades ago. It was poetic. It was cruel. It was the perfect place for a finale. They entered cautiously. Flashlights sweeping over dusty props and half-destroyed sets. The silence was suffocating. A projector flickered to life ahead of them, casting shaky light across the room. Footage played, scenes from Sidney Prescott's life. Her mother. Her friends. Dewey. All the blood she'd seen. Then the image changed, to Mark Kincaid. Her husband. His death replayed, filmed from an angle that made Sydney's stomach drop. He had recorded it. "Welcome back, Mom," Evan's voice echoed from the speakers, smooth and venomous. "Do you like what I've done with our family history?" Sydney's voice trembled with rage. "Where are you, Evan?" "Oh, I'm right here." He stepped into the light, Ghostface mask hanging from his hand, the knife dripping blood. The wound on his shoulder had been crudely stitched, his smile calm, almost affectionate. "You could have been my mother," he said softly. "You could have saved us both. But instead, you tried to erase us, me, my father, his memory. You tried to bury your sins in someone else's grave." Sydney took a step forward. "Billy was a murderer." Evan's eyes flared. "Billy was a visionary. He showed the world that fear isn't chaos, it's power. And you killed him. I survived him. Then survive me." He lunged. The warehouse erupted in chaos, bullets, screams, flashing lights. Gale and Kirby fired from opposite sides, but Ghostface moved like a shadow, slashing at the air, laughing as sparks flew from shattered lights. Sydney ducked behind a pillar, firing twice. One bullet grazed his mask, the other hit his side. He stumbled, hissing in pain, but didn't stop. "You can't kill me," he shouted, voice shaking with fury. "You can't kill the story." Sydney reloaded, her voice echoing through the smoke. "Then I'll end it." She tackled him into the projector, sparks flying as the film reel burned. Flames spread across the room, the old celluloid igniting instantly. Evan slashed at her, cutting deep into her arm. She screamed, shoving him backward into the flames. He roared in agony, the mask melting against his skin. Sydney stared at him through the fire. Your father died for nothing. And so will you. She fired one last shot, straight through his heart. He fell, silent. The building burned. Minutes later, Gale and Kirby dragged Sydney from the collapsing structure. Sirens wailed in the distance. The night air was thick with smoke and ash. They watched the warehouse crumble, the place where the story began, ending in fire. Kirby looked at Sydney. Is it over? Sydney's eyes were distant, reflecting the flames. It's never over. Not while the mask exists. And as the fire consumed the last remnants of Stab, a melted Ghostface mask rolled out onto the street, still smoldering, the hollow mouth twisted into a silent scream. The city was quiet again. Too quiet. 3 weeks had passed since the warehouse fire that killed Evan Loomis, the so-called son of Ghostface. The police called it the end of the Silver Lake Massacre. News anchors smiled on live television, declaring the Ghostface era is finally over. But deep down, Sydney Prescott knew better. She sat alone in a hospital room, her right arm wrapped in bandages, her face pale from exhaustion. The world outside was trying to move on. But inside her head, the screams hadn't stopped. Every creak of a door, every shuffle of footsteps in the hallway made her heart pound. The nurses had started leaving her room lights on at night. They said it helped her sleep. It didn't. A faint knock echoed at the door. Sydney. It was Gale, holding 2 coffees. She looked just as tired, but alive. Thought you could use this. Decaf this time, I swear. Sydney managed a smile. You've learned. They sat in silence for a while, sipping coffee, both women knowing there were no words to erase what they'd seen. Gale finally broke the silence. They found something in the rubble. Sydney froze. What kind of something? Gale pulled out a small plastic evidence bag. Inside was a charred piece of metal, twisted and blackened, but unmistakable. It was a voice changer. Still intact. Sydney stared at it, her stomach dropping. He's dead, Gale. Yeah, Gale said slowly. But the signal from this, it wasn't local. It was connected to an IP outside Silver Lake. Someone else was watching. Maybe even controlling him. Sydney's hands trembled. You mean? There's another Ghostface, Gale finished quietly. 2 nights later, Sydney checked herself out of the hospital. She told no one. Not Gale, not the police. She just left, quietly, like a ghost slipping through the halls. She drove out of Silver Lake in the dead of night, the highway lights blurring past as she gripped the steering wheel tight. Her destination, Woodsboro. The place where it all began. The town was smaller than she remembered, quieter. The main street was mostly deserted, the once infamous Prescott house long since demolished. All that remained was an empty lot, a scar on the land. She parked across from it, stepped out, and stared at the empty foundation. The moonlight painted everything in silver. It felt peaceful. Too peaceful. Then her phone buzzed. A message. No number. Just one line. Welcome home, Sid Performing Arts. Sydney's breath caught. Then the sound of a ringtone echoed nearby, the classic Ghostface call tone. Slow. Shrill. Mocking. She turned toward the woods. A flicker of white. A movement. Someone was standing between the trees. The mask. The knife. Ghostface. Sydney raised her gun instantly. You picked the wrong night. The figure tilted its head, taunting. Then, it vanished into the dark. Sydney followed, her flashlight cutting through the trees, her pulse thundering in her ears. The woods were dense, silent except for the crunch of leaves underfoot. Her phone rang again. She answered. Who is this? A distorted voice chuckled. Don't you recognize me, Sydney? I've been your biggest fan. Evan's dead. Oh, Evan was just an actor. You should know that better than anyone. The real story's much bigger. You killed my brother, Sydney. You killed the story's future. Sydney's blood ran cold. Who are you? Think of me, the voice said, as the sequel. Something moved fast, a blur of white and black, and Sydney barely ducked as a knife slashed across her shoulder. She fired back, the shot echoing through the woods. The figure disappeared behind a tree. Sydney shouted, "Show yourself." The voice came from every direction now, distorted, layered, mocking. You thought fire could stop the legend? No, 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 you don't kill an idea, Sydney. You just make it scream louder. Suddenly, multiple Ghostface stepped out from the darkness, 3, maybe 4, their knives glinting under the moonlight. Her flashlight shook. No, not again. The first charged. Sydney fired, hit one in the chest. He dropped, but 2 more lunged from behind. She spun, firing again, catching one in the leg. The last one grabbed her from behind, knife raised. A gunshot exploded through the air. The Ghostface fell. Sydney turned. Gail was standing at the edge of the woods, gun smoking in her hand, her face pale but furious. Can't leave you alone for 5 minutes, can I? She said. They stood back to back as the last Ghostface charged. Together they fired, and he collapsed into the dirt. For a moment, the woods were silent. Sydney knelt, ripping the mask off the nearest body, a young man, maybe 20. A stranger. Then another, a woman. Another stranger. Gail whispered, "They're kids." Sydney's voice trembled. He was telling the truth. It's a cult now. From somewhere deeper in the woods, the voice returned, faint, echoing through hidden speakers. You can't kill what's already become legend. The scream never dies, Sydney. It just finds a new mask. Static. Then silence. By morning, the police swarmed the area. No trace of the voice's source was found. No leader, no control center, just bodies and blood. Sydney and Gail sat by the road as dawn broke, exhaustion written across their faces. Gail finally said, "If this keeps going, there'll be no one left." Sydney stared at the rising sun. Then we end it, for good. No sequels. No survivors. Gail nodded slowly. What if we fail? Sydney looked out over the field, where the masks lay scattered like skulls. Then the world will keep screaming, she whispered. And as the camera of an unseen hand filmed them from the shadows, a faint recording light blinked red. Ghostface's voice whispered one last time. Smile for the final cut. Fade to black. The END, or just another beginning. Performing Arts Kitchen Knife.